Hello, friends, and welcome back to Stories About Entitled People. No one likes noisy neighbors, not even Karen herself. First story about her. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel if you're new here, and turn on notifications so you don't miss a new video every single day. Sit comfortably. Here we go. Call the police on me? Have your car towed. I was showering this morning and like to have music on my phone while I shower. The music was playing on my iPhone 10 on the bathroom counter, not on a speaker or anything. I keep the window open for ventilation. The lady that lives 2 houses away from me was walking her dog and apparently could hear my music. It's coming from an iPhone, so it's really not very loud. I can barely hear it in the shower. Ultimately, she called the police and complained that I was blasting music at 6 a.m. and waking all the neighbors. First of all, I've lived here for 15 years and I know all the neighbors. She's lived here for 2 months and has been a total Karen the whole time to all of us. Anyways, her house only has 1 parking spot, but she has 2 cars. There is a spot on my property, but I have a very clear sign that says, "No parking, violators will be towed at owner's expense." She's parked here before and I've let it slide because I don't want to make waves with my neighbors. Well, the police showed up and she showed the police a video she took this morning. An officer and I laughed privately as he told me how ridiculous she was being. Then I noticed her car was in my spot. Her car just got towed away. And our next story. Management busted. To start with a little backstory, I was 16 years old and working at my first job at a major fast food chain. The restaurant was a franchise and the franchise owner, let's call him Mike, owned multiple franchise locations across the city. Below him was the guy who dealt with the day-to-day operations of the locations. Let's call him Jeff. Now at my restaurant, there was the general manager, who I'll call Carmela, and multiple shift managers. I worked there for only about 4 months before I secured a better job. I turned in my 2-week notice directly to Carmela. I specifically stated a date in which my employment will end and had a short conversation with Carmela confirming the details. Come my final week, I was scheduled the day before the date I had listed on my notice. Carmela also went off on vacation that week and put a shift manager in charge of scheduling and keeping track of hours. When I showed up for work on my last day, I went to clock in and was unable to do so. Apparently, I was removed from the login system a day short of when I was supposed to be. No problem, I'll just record my clock times manually, and I worked my shift like normal while recording my clock times on a piece of receipt paper. At the end of my shift, I had the shift manager post the receipt paper on the corkboard, and he sent a message to Carmela to adjust my hours accordingly since I couldn't clock in that day. The total time I worked was around 5 hours. I took a picture of the receipt paper showing my hours posted on the corkboard, so I was sure I had proof that I was there. Come payday, Jeff was there, and I personally turned in my uniform to him and picked up my check. I've always kept a very accurate record of my hours and discovered that my paycheck was short the exact amount of time I worked on my last day. I immediately brought it to Jeff's attention and gave him a rundown of what happened. He gave me his phone number to text him the whole situation and send him the picture I took so that he had it written down. He told me he was going to get it figured out and follow up with me. Over the course of a couple weeks, I followed up multiple times with no response. I felt at this point the wait was getting ridiculous, so I got into contact with HR for the restaurant's corporate operations. I was basically told that since I worked at a franchise, there was nothing they could do, and I had to get in contact with the franchise owner directly. After failing to find contact information for Mike, I decided to go to the labor board for help. The labor board informed me that since they did not pay me in full for the hours worked, I was entitled to back pay of 8 hours every day they did not pay me up to 30 days. The labor board opened a case and immediately started attempting to contact the franchise owner to no avail. Eventually, they sent a letter to the franchise owner's home address directly, and I received a call from Mike on a Friday asking me why the labor board is going after him. I gave him a complete rundown of everything that happened, and he told me that this was the first time he'd heard about the situation. We arranged to meet at the restaurant a few days later. When we met, we had a very open conversation on my time there. I told him everything about issues that were arising with the managers, all the way to not being able to clock in on my last day. At this point, if the labor dispute went to court, he would be looking at thousands of dollars in back pay due to how long it was taking to get it sorted out. We agreed to settle it for around $500. I felt on top of the world because my missing wages were only about $45 or so. I visited the restaurant a few weeks later and found out that since the case was settled, a lot of things changed. Come to find out, Carmela and Jeff were hiding the case from Mike by destroying the letters and not responding to the calls from the labor board. They were also preventing contact with Mike by removing his contact information from the break room and refusing to make it available to employees. Mike fixed all that by permanently posting his information in the break room and even set up a 1-800 number that he posted behind the registers so that if any customers had complaints, they can submit a complaint to him directly. I'm not sure what happened with Jeff and Carmela, but I know the management was rearranged due to the issues I brought up with them in our conversation. Evidently, my new job was at a major drugstore chain that Carmela used as her pharmacy. A few months later, while I was working, Carmela came in and noticed I worked there. Shortly after, I found out from the pharmacy department that she started going to the pharmacy of another location. Kudos to following through and seeing it out to the end over something that seemed small at the start. And our last story. Go ahead and ignore my warning. I will take all the overtime you will give me. This took place about 2 years ago when I was driving a delivery truck for a big box store. Every morning after loading the truck with the day's deliveries, the driver would fill out an inspection sheet ensuring that they had looked over the truck and that everything was functioning as it should. Pretty standard procedure, and any good company pays attention to these logs. Tuesday, as I was making local deliveries, I noticed that the transmission in my truck was acting up. It was having a hard time changing gears and would occasionally lurch. I made sure to call my manager to let her know what was going on and was instructed to just keep making my deliveries. I noted the problem on the daily inspection sheet, and then when I got back to the store, I went ahead and sent an email explaining the problem to my manager and her boss to cover my butt. Friday morning, after a nice 2 days off, I was assigned the same truck, and when it came time to do my morning inspection, I realized that no one had driven it while I was gone, and therefore the truck had not been taken to a shop or seen by a mechanic. I was also only 2 hours away from hitting overtime, and my manager decided that instead of being stuck making local deliveries for 10 hours, instead I would take one large delivery 2 hours from the store and end my work week with only 2.5-ish hours of overtime. Before I left, I made sure to remind my manager that the truck had been acting up, and she again told me to just keep making my deliveries and to call her if there was a problem. Well, guess what happened? An hour and a half after leaving the store while driving through rural Arkansas, the transmission on the truck crapped out, but I was able to coast into the parking lot of a long-abandoned gas station, which was especially nice since the road didn't have a shoulder. My manager was not pleased when I told her that the truck was now undrivable and that I hadn't even made my one delivery yet. She instructed me to let the customer know we would have to reschedule the delivery while she arranged for a tow truck. Well, guess what happened next? The customer absolutely refused to reschedule their delivery. On my truck were 3 pallets of hardwood flooring, and the customer already had a crew on site waiting for the flooring to arrive so it could be installed. They were furious and insisted that no matter what, the flooring had to be delivered today. The customer had ordered about $8,000 worth of product, so when they called the store upset, management guaranteed that the delivery would be made that day as promised. So guess what I got to do? I was paid to sit in the truck and wait for the other delivery drivers to finish their local deliveries for the day, then drive out to where my truck was stranded, transfer the flooring to their truck, and complete the delivery. It took 9 hours for the other truck to arrive. The guy who was in the truck with me was livid and likely would have quit there on the spot if he wasn't stranded with me. Each truck is required to be manned by 2 people, and luckily me and the guy got along pretty good, but he was cussing up a storm by the time the other truck arrived. Once the other truck did arrive, it took us nearly an hour to swap the pallets from our truck to the next using pallet jacks on uneven surfaces. Finally, we got that done and were able to make the delivery and all go home when we realized that there were 4 of us all together, but only 3 seats in the truck that came to get us. Someone would have to wait while another coworker drove the hour and a half to come get them. My coworker was determined to get out of there that instant, and neither of the guys who came to get us wanted to stay either, so I happily volunteered to. My manager had already left for the evening, but the closing manager was able to get a cashier who I was friends with to agree to pick me up in their personal vehicle. They did so on the clock and got reimbursed for the mileage once their shift was over at 8 p.m. It was nearly 10 p.m. before my ride finally arrived. I had him stop and pick me up some McDonald's on the way since I'd run out of water and chips hours before, and midnight when we finally got back to the store. Everyone else had left hours before, but the closing manager had to remain until we came back so he could lock the store up after we clocked out and went home for the night. I clocked out that night having put in an 18-hour shift, 16 hours of which was overtime. When I came in at 6 a.m. the following morning, instead of being assigned a truck for the day, I had to have a meeting with HR, my manager, her manager, and the store manager to explain what the F had happened. Luckily, my emails and truck inspection slips were enough to cover my butt, and instead of getting fired, HR let me go home to catch up on sleep while my manager got her butt chewed out instead. We had a nice new rental truck waiting for me Sunday when I came back while my usual truck was in the shop. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video, and I'll see you in the next one.